Welcome back to Movie Review Mom. If you've never been here before, be sure and subscribe and ring that little bell, and it'll notify you every time I upload a new movie review, which is every day because there are so many new movies coming out, which I love. I love that we're getting the option of course, movies at the theater, but for those who aren't comfortable with that or don't have movie theaters open in their area, we have all kinds of options for video on demand with Netflix and Amazon and Apple TV Plus and HBO Plus, as is the case of this movie today. It's available on HBO Max, and the movie I'm talking about is The Witches. This movie is rated PG, although I'm going to give you a heads up for parents because I think it's super scary. It's an hour and 46 minutes, and the movie review mom grade I'm giving it is a B minus. And let me explain why I'm giving it the grade that I am. I'm going to give you a quick overview, some tips for parents, and I'll point out things I liked and didn't like, as well as some movie recommendations and themes worth talking about after you watch this movie. Okay, so first, in a nutshell, this movie is timed perfectly for Halloween. We also have Hubie Halloween on Netflix, but if you don't get Netflix and you've got HBO, here's another option. And really, when I think of Halloween, sometimes I get in the mood for something that's not too scary. So I like the movie Hocus Pocus. It's family friendly, but it kind of gets you in the mood. So I was wondering if we were going to have any other options besides Hubie Halloween. And this is an option, but it may not be for everyone. So if you've seen the 1990s version of The Witches starring Angelica Houston, you know that movie is pretty scary. So as a remake, this one is PG and it's being touted as family friendly, but I actually think it's really scary and creepy for little kids. So as parents, you should first preview this movie and then decide if you think your kids are going to be able to handle it. Because I thought it was really scary. The cast includes two Academy Award winners, Anne Hathaway and Octavia Spencer. They're both fantastic. However, the movie critics out there have extremely mixed reviews. There are some who love it and think it's delightful and family friendly, and there are those who hate it with a passion. So, first of all, the screenplay was written by director Robert Zemeckis, Kenya Barris, and wait for it, Guillermo del Toro, all based on the 1983 book by Roald Dahl. So if you've read that book, you probably have other expectations for this movie as well. The movie is also produced by Guillermo del Toro, who actually wanted this book to be a stop motion picture. So let me give you some more tips for parents before we get into more of the nitty gritty. Some people die. You see a young boy in a bathtub, but bubbles protect his privacy. Children are told very clearly to never take candy from strangers, which is pretty hard to do at Halloween. And as I mentioned, there are creepy images that could really frighten young children, especially. And you don't want to traumatize them. So that's why I said just preview it. Some themes that are worth mentioning are when Grandma, played by Octavia Spencer, says, sometimes life isn't fair. And that's a really great lesson to learn, especially during the year 2020 when crazy stuff is happening and kids need to learn that and to learn to be resilient. Another theme is darkness, good versus evil. And another thing the grandma says is life changes all of us, which is also true. I don't know that any of us could pass through this year of 2020 with the worldwide pandemic and all of the things that have happened and remain unchanged. And then another really sweet message of the movie is another line that grandma says, which is never give up what you are inside. All right, so now let me point out some things that I really liked about the movie. First of all, I've always loved Anne Hathaway. She looks like she's really having fun with this role as the Grand High Witch. She's elegant and beautiful and very, very scary. She gives an over the top performance as this sexy, truly evil leading witch. Octavia Spencer also is fantastic and can do no wrong, in my opinion. She's the perfect grandmother and is just adorable and loving and awesome in this movie. So those two really carry the movie. I also love Stanley Tucci in anything. He's so talented. And so I was a little bit disappointed that he didn't have more to do with his role as opposed to his counterpart in the 1990s version of the movie. You'll recognize the adorable Kristen Chenoweth's voice in the movie. And so that was a fun surprise since I didn't even know she was going to be in it. The makeup and special effects are really good. There are a few moments where the CGI is just noticeably off, but generally they're pretty good. There's some fun music and some great food, especially in Act One. And Act One is very charming, where we get to learn the relationship between the grandmother and her grandson. And she brings him into her home. And it just made me laugh out loud when I saw her couch covered with that plastic cover. I remember being a little girl and going into my friends' houses and seeing in their formal living room a couch that was pristine and perfect because it was covered with plastic. And I was just like, why would you do that? Thankfully, my parents let us actually sit on our couch and not have a plastic cover. Anyway, it was just very 60s, so it just made me laugh. Keep watching, by the way, during the closing credits for the rest of the story. Now, some things that I didn't like include, first of all, a warning that if you get a little queasy around mice and rats, you're not going to enjoy this story. As I mentioned, in Act One, it's charming and light. And then we're introduced to a very creepy witch. And the world of witches is expanded. And we're like, wow. And then in Acts 2 and 3, the witches all gather at this hotel. And the world building sort of collapses to just these few witches in this one hotel. So I thought that that, in a sense, made the story less scary in that regard. The narrator usually states the obvious. We can see what's happening on the screen, and then we hear that narrator's voice. Now, at the very beginning, we don't know anything, and so we appreciate the information we're given. But then during the scenes, the narrator says stuff that we can actually see already on the screen. So the tone didn't seem like it was a match, and the purpose of the narrator in the middle of the story just seemed unnecessary. The voice is Chris Rock, and his tone didn't actually match the story either. So that seemed like a mismatch. A lot of the humor didn't really land for me. And in fact, I like to write down the funny lines in movies for my written review at moviereviewmom.com. And I saw that I didn't really write down anything, but I did write a bunch of intriguing lines. I'll tell you a few of those in just a minute. A lot of the action sequences look really cartoony and exaggerated. And even the music by Alan Silvestri feels heavy-handed and over the top at times. Anne Hathaway's accent is really odd, and often we can't even understand what she's saying. Now, in one scene, that's one of the gags, is that Stanley Tucci can't understand what she's saying. But for the rest of the movie, sometimes we're going, wait, what would she say? And then that first witch that I mentioned that we see in Act One is really spooky and has this grovelly voice. And then we don't really see her do anything. She's a background witch, but she doesn't have any more speaking roles. And it seemed like a missed opportunity because she was so good. Well, bad, really, in the very first act of the movie. There's a cliched dance scene at the end of the movie. And so the movie feels like it wants to be kid friendly, and yet it's really scary for little kids. And So the tone of the movie for me kept shifting between really family friendly and maybe for teenagers, you know? All right, here are just a couple more lines by Grandma that introduce some themes and some insightful moments. So, for example, she tells her grandson, sometimes when the good Lord wants to teach us something, it doesn't come in the way that we expect. Well, that is definitely what happens in this movie. And then she also says, no one knows how much time they have on this earth. And so she teaches her grandson to really embrace what you've been given in life. And again, that's a timely message for 2020, I think, for sure. All right, two quick recommendations for movies that are sort of similar, at least Halloweeny. But the first one that came to my mind is a Meryl Streep movie with Goldie Hawn called Death Becomes Her. It's kind of fun, Halloweeny, scary yet funny. And then, of course, as I mentioned earlier, that classic witches movie, Hocus Pocus. And then, if you haven't seen the original 1990s version with Angelica Houston, catch that. And then check below down in the description, and that's where I've got the links to make it really easy for you to find those movies. And purchasing or renting one of those videos helps to support my little channel. Again, thank you so much for subscribing and tell your friends that I'm here. All right, I hope you enjoy this movie if you choose to watch it. Until the next time, I'll see you. Bye for now.